This is
Nick's News. Nick's News. Part 2. Coming at you today live. Okay, obviously this isn't live. I just, like to say that because I want to sound special and cool. But we're not live today. Today is June 5th, 2024. Got a lot of news to talk about. And I'm going to get through it as quickly as I can so we don't have 40 months of recording. Start with the obligatories. F1_philosophy at Instagram. F1 Philosophy at YouTube. You guys have been loving our shorts. We want you guys to keep liking and watching those. And F1philosophypod at gmail.com to sign up for the Fantasy League. I usually have a quip here about producer Gatsby, but he's in 5th, so we don't really care about him anymore. And that's just the reality. But yeah, please sign up to join our Fantasy League. We'd love to have you on there. Okay, so a lot of news has happened in the past week since I last talked. So let's get into it. First off, let's talk about the news that happened yesterday. Sergio Perez is still at Red Bull for another 2 years. I think I know where a lot of you stand on that. I think based on what I'm seeing in the meme culture online, this is a terrible choice in a lot of your eyes. I disagree with that. I think this is absolutely the best course of action for everybody. I think Perez is a great number 2 driver for Max. Don't want someone messing up Max's chemistry. You don't want anyone messing up Max's abilities, Max's car. Remember, yeah, Sergio's having a hard time driving that car, as we can clearly see, and especially in some races, he's completely useless. And when he is, I'm critical of him because he needs to be at a certain level. It's not necessarily about winning races or even being second to Max all the time. It's getting enough points that they can win the Constructors, A, and B, slowing down his competitors. And when he doesn't do that, that's when I'm most critical of him. But that being said, it's the obvious choice. You don't want someone else coming in like a Lando Norris, which was originally offered, would come in and just compete with Max when Max has spent time building that car, making it his own. You don't want someone like that coming in messing it up for him. Potentially, Max may still run over that person because, like I said, it's Max's car. But you don't want Max competing with his teammate and the rest of the grid. You want someone who, like Max, focused on just winning for his team. And they're going through a bit of a blip now, which, like I said in the last episode, still a first, a second, or a second, a first, and a 6th. And the 6th was in Monaco at a bumpy course that does not suit the Red Bull. Could have been higher if you could pass in Monaco. Keep that in mind. Like, there was no ability to pass, so Max was hindered there. Otherwise, like I said, in our philosophy, he probably still would have not won the race, but came close. Probably would have at least been on the podium if he had an ability to pass. But yeah, so Red Bull may be struggling right now, but in the long term, if this is working, just keep it. And I think that's the good round number. I would have actually advocated for 1 year at a time with Perez and just keeping him for 2025 in the hopes that he improves. And if he doesn't improve, then you can get another second driver as the market clears up, as more people end their contracts. You can get someone who might fit a bit better, someone maybe a bit younger, maybe like a Lawson, maybe it might be Tsunoda's time there in 2025, which I disagree with, but let's just say that that's their thought process. That's how you could have looked at it. I don't understand the 2-year contract with Perez because he is performing, but he's also going to be in decline. And by the end of 2026, you're going to probably wish you had someone else, unless he comes up with a miraculous spell of form, which, based on his last couple of years, is not going to be the case. If they sat here and told him, just be number 2 to Max and don't worry about anything else, maybe he turns it around. Maybe he gets more confidence. But yeah, still think the 1 year was the better play. But it's still, to me, I know this is probably a hot take to some, and a lot of you may disagree, it's still the right play for Red Bull. For Red Bull, speaking, not for us. We want to see someone a little bit more competitive in that machinery. At least we did last year when we thought that that would be the only car that could be competitive. But I think Red Bull is signaling McLaren and Ferrari are going to be at our heels. So we want to make sure we have Max completely happy, Max not fucked with by his teammate, just someone solid, if unspectacular, in the second car, which makes absolute sense for Perez. Let's say like a Ricciardo comes in and does worse when he wants to do better and he wants to challenge Max. But he, like I said, he comes in and starts doing worse. You're behind by not re-signing Perez. And if Ricciardo comes in and does a lot better and challenges Max, then that's not good for the team. So yeah, Daniel Ricciardo didn't make sense in that. Perez made the most sense. I don't think Yuki would have stepped in and done anything more than Perez could have done. Sean may disagree with that, but we'll get his take on that. And yeah, someone like Carlos Sainz, who has had a history with Max before, probably doesn't make much sense. They were at each other's throats the last time they were together in that Red Bull. So, yeah, it's probably better or best to go with Perez, especially if you think you now have competition from the back. And if you don't, then Max is going to run away with it anyways. And you have someone who will stay out of his way while you please your main guy. In every extent, in every logical sense, it made the most sense to keep Perez. So I'm going to say kudos to Red Bull for this signing. As much as I've been critical with Perez the last couple races, it could just be a dip in form. Let's say he keeps getting this worse in terms of points and position, but he starts defending better against the people who are competing with Max, like Lando, Charles, Carlos, which I don't think is going to, like Carlos and Charles, I don't think are going to actually challenge Max. They may challenge in the constructors because they're good points getters, but they're not going to win races. Leclerc won a race where you couldn't pass. Like who cares? And that's been his only win since Austria 2022. So Leclerc's not a threat by any means. Lando may be a threat, and we'll see what that's like going forward. But let's keep in mind, Lando doesn't exactly have the winner's touch yet. He still has to earn that and prove that. He's finally got a win, and we're all very happy for him, and we all think he can do great things in the future. And as much as I may disagree with this, he has slowly helped develop that McLaren, even though I'd like to remind everybody, they do take steps back at the beginning of the year, which doesn't speak to a great developer in Lando. But he's been there long enough, there's familiarity, and they're building the car around Lando. So I'm optimistic that there's probably going to be fights at the front now, and that's why they locked in Perez, and now it's in their competitors' courts. What does this mean, though, for Carlos Sainz? Another door has closed on him. And not many have closed on him. It just looks like the rumors are Mercedes has closed on him. Mercedes is no longer interested in having him in that seat, which I think they're looking at their own long-term options. They're looking at Antonelli. They hopefully are considering Mick Schumacher, maybe even Sebastian Vettel. They don't see a need for Carlos Sainz, allegedly. He could still end up there. But yeah, the Red Bull has closed now for Sainz. So all his options at the front, it looks like, and Mercedes is not at the front, but in the top tier, we should say, are now close to him. So where does he go? Should he now take the Audi offer? And it's speculated this week that he didn't actually turn him down. So maybe he's just holding out, waiting to see what his other options are, and then he'll eventually go to Audi. Is he waiting for maybe Williams to extend something to him, something very lucrative? He considered an old legacy team, maybe help them rise back to the front. And like Sean and I have talked about, Carlos Sainz going backwards in a lot of ways is win-win. Because you either go there and you can blame the car if they're bad. You can say, look, you've seen what I've done with good cars. And if you make the car better, you can say, look how good I am. Maybe bigger teams should consider me in a couple of years when spots open up. It's a win-win for Carlos. I would caution this, though, is his age. So if you go to a backmarker team, the car's bad and you're not performing, yeah, you can blame the car, but people can also look at you and say, okay, now you're in your 30s after a couple of years. Maybe we don't need you in the long term. Maybe you're not a long-term winning option for us. You weren't exactly spectacular at Ferrari. You were good. You were really good at times. And like I said, I really rated his Australia 2024 really highly. But he's not exactly a champion, is he? So just caution that, Sainz. Maybe lock into a team that you know has a good future and where you know you can perform. Don't just take the Audi seat because it's open. Don't just take the Haas seat because it's open. Don't just take the Alpine because it's open. Don't just take the Williams. Really think about it. And speaking of Alpine, Ocon's gone too. So it seems that the punishment wasn't you're out of Canada. The punishment was you're gone in general. You're gone at the end of this season. Stay with us, help us rebuild, and get the fuck out, Esteban. Don't let the door hit you on your way out. So I doubt Monaco was what did him in. But I think Monaco was probably the last straw. He's been a bad teammate with Gasly since the beginning of last year. He's been a bad teammate with Perez at Force India. He was a bad teammate with Alonso, and I think Van Man finally said, okay, like Sean said, Ocon's always been the problem. Let's get rid of the problem. Let's start rebuilding now. We're at the bottom. He's not exactly helping us get better. Do what you can this year and get the hell out. That's, I think, their way of saying, you keep your seat for now. This is our last favor to you. Good luck in the future. Now, a lot of people are saying Haas is a good option for him, even the Sauber seat, which we talked about, Sean and I, at the Monaco recap, which would be the stupidest fucking thing in the world. For Sauber, at least. Like, why would you want someone that brash at your team when you're looking to build and grow from scratch? You're seeing what he's doing at Alpine. It's not exactly great when he has a bad car. And on top of that, you're going to alienate someone who you like Nico Hülkenberg, which is still stupid. It's still a stupid decision. I'd like to remind everybody how stupid that was of Sauber. And I think they know, but they quote-unquote needed a German driver. Why they didn't coax Sebastian Vettel or, say, Mick Schumacher, I'll never know. But you're going to have two bad drivers if you get Ocon there. And I don't think Sauber is really taking him seriously. And if they are, it's because they couldn't get Sainz and they were desperate. But we'll see. What nobody is saying, I've noticed in the media, is that nobody's talking that Ocon may be done. Only Sean, I noticed, Sean made a post saying, hopefully with any luck we'll have him out of F1. Nobody's talking about that. They're all seeming to think that he's a good option for a team. And based on what? So if he's going, only can go backwards from this point. So he's only either going to Haas or Sauber. Doesn't look like Williams is interested in him. Where does he go? So remember, Mick had an attitude at Haas. Esteban has an attitude. Esteban has a penchant for penalties and crashing. That's what they said Mick had. So now Haas is seriously considering someone with less potential who's proven less over his period of time in Formula One, because someone worse than Mick, I'm trying to say. And Mick was unacceptable at Haas. But now Ocon is older, more useless, more brash over his years, and has no future. So you're going to bring someone like Esteban Ocon in, even though you couldn't stand Mick Schumacher? Now, we all know that Haas just didn't like Mick because Gunther didn't like Mick. And Gunther wanted to destroy the Schumacher name, like Toto Wolff implied in many interviews. But I'm just saying, logically speaking, if you couldn't stand Mick Schumacher, why would you bring in Esteban Ocon? In a lot of ways, they're the same. I think Mick's way better. At least Mick has a better future. But let's say Ocon has the experience, yeah, but not good experience. He may not overachieve at your car. He has no ability to develop cars. He can overachieve in decent machinery sometimes. Is your car going to be decent? Based on the way Hülkenberg and Magnussen are taking it, not really. Komatsu is going to need a few years there. If he even can do it. Ocon doesn't really make sense anywhere is what I'm trying to get at. And I think Formula One media and the Formula One management needs to start looking into that. That maybe his time might be done. If F1 management wanted Mick Schumacher out, why are you going to fight over Esteban Ocon? Anyway, let's see. But Ocon's departure leaves an opening at Alpine, which is pretty amazing, I think. For Formula One philosophy's, shall we say, white whale, Formula One philosophy is trying to get Mick Schumacher on the grid, which is our white whale. And getting Mick Schumacher in Alpine is actually not a bad idea. And apparently Faman's very impressed with him, impressed with his work. Yeah, he should be. Mercedes is also talking up his reputation, saying he does great work for us, great work with the simulation. And we'll talk more about Mick and his future at maybe Mercedes in a bit. But if he might make a lot of sense at Alpine for other reasons too. Because I think he can help develop a team going forward. Haas said it. We loved his input at Haas. The engineer said that, of course, after Gunther Steiner destroyed his reputation, which thanks so much for that. He can develop a team going forward. Former F2, F3 champion, you know he can be quick at times. You just need to let him develop a car. He's a Schumacher. He needs to make the car his own. This would be the time to do it. This would be the chance to give him to do that when you're at your bottom. On top of that, there's also other things from the past that they're quirks, I'm going to admit. Like, they're just like things that, ooh, this is interesting. Flavio Briatore was recently signed on as a consultant to Alpine, allegedly. I think that's still yet to be confirmed, but it's insinuated that's about to happen. What happened the last time Briatore and Schumacher were at Renault engines? With Benetton, and Benetton is what started Alpine. Alpine came from Benetton 30 years ago. 30 years ago, you got two championships with a Briatore and a Schumacher. Now, obviously, things are different. Mick's a little bit different. It's not the same situation. Briatore is obviously not going to be hands-on like he was at Benetton. But Briatore does have the right mindset to win. So Alpine are suddenly starting to look like a very attractive team for the future. And apparently Briatore's, one of the main things that Briatore is trying to do is trying to coax Adrian Newey to come to Alpine. Which, like Sean and I talked about in other episodes, Newey doesn't really want to go to Italy. He wants to go and stay in England. So Alpine is an end stone. It seems more attractive to Newey to go to Alpine than it does to Ferrari. Both of them are two new tough engines that Newey would have to figure out. But in the past, he's done great work with Renault engines when the Renault was good, from the 2009 to 2013 era. You saw some of the best cars, most dominant cars ever made. If Alpine figures out their engine, which could be happening, you have a good, attractive trident right there. Mick Schumacher, Flavio Briatore, Adrian Newey. The only thing that's missing is not Adrian Newey, Briatore, Mick Schumacher, and Ross Brawn, but I don't think Ross Brawn's coming out of retirement anytime soon. But I think it's worth noting that Alpine suddenly look very attractive from that sense. If they get the right management in place, they can grow. They've gotten rid of the problem in Esteban Ocon. They should hire someone like Mick Schumacher. And I saw the odds to get the seat are Jack Doohan first. Okay, who cares? He came third in F3 sometime. And like Sean and I have talked about, people outside of the winner spot in F2 do not fare well. The last four drivers being Nikita Mazepin, Logan Sargent, Nicholas Latifi, Zhou Guanyu, and I'd like to add Yuki Tsunoda. Took 4 years at a very good youth-minded team in Red Bull. And took a lot of patience with him. It took 4 years for him to become this, which is steady and finally consistent. Whereas before he was brash, crashed a lot, and didn't perform that well at a really good Red Bull or AlphaTauri back in the day. His first year, 2021, he had a really good AlphaTauri. He was very average. But yeah, outside of the winners of F2, you don't get really good F1 drivers, which is why Antonelli should wait a few more years in F2 and try and win. Try and really show his stuff. And Oliver Bierman is going to be an awful addition to F1 if he comes in. I already talked about it in the last episode, so I won't go into it too much. I'd just like to add that I forgot to mention, in the Fountainhead, Gail Winan, like I talked about the Fountainhead in the last episode a lot, Gail Winan is appalled at the thought of destroying Ellsworth Toohey. And the thought, it says, why would I bring a tank to destroy an ant? And I'd like to add that I'm Gail Winan and Oliver Bierman is Ellsworth Toohey. And I need to destroy the thought and the name of Oliver Bierman Because as Dominique Franken says, the protagonist's wife, and Howard Rourke is the protagonist, Dominique Franken is his wife, she says, you have to destroy him right now, otherwise he will get too strong. They will talk him up too much, and he will be stuck here no matter how bad and how poor his results are in F1. So I'm destroying him now while he's weak. And yes, it seems ridiculous, but we need to go at him hard and fast now, so he's never brought into F1 for no results in F2 and nothing special in F1. But anyways, just keep that in mind, Alpine. Why go with Doohan? Why even go? Apparently, Zhou Guanyu is high up on their list, which would be fucking stupid. Like, who wants to keep this idiot on the grid? Doesn't matter how bad he is, how inconsistent he is, how poor he is towards the back. All the time. He was last place in Monaco. What do you see in this kid? In 3 years now, he has the same points as Mick Schumacher at better cars. Mick Schumacher was unattainable in the sport, F2 champion, at a bad Haas in 2021, a Haas that was 2020 undeveloped, almost killed Romain Grosjean. And then he does a few crashes in 2022, and he's out. But Zhou Guanyu's been way worse now. Way worse consistently for 3 seasons. And he's still valued? If you put Zhou Guanyu in that car and not Mick Schumacher, you're fucking retarded, Alpine. And I will take back everything I said about you being an attractive spot. You'll have ruined all your potential if Jack Doohan and Zhou Guanyu are given that spot over Mick Schumacher. Schumacher, Briatore, and Braun. Or Schumacher, Briatore, and Nui. It works. We know it works. The other piece of news I'd like to add, actually, I'll talk about something else first. Former team principals say the darndest things, don't they? I saw a report from Planet F1 the other day. Gunther Steiner saying nobody should sign Mick. Alpine should not sign Mick Schumacher. What is this idiot still commentating on? Like, what advice and wisdom can he impart on the F1 grid at this point? How to take a team with a lot of money and run them into the fucking ground? Yeah, Steiner, we know now you were lying this entire time that you had no money to build things. Because Gene Haas came out this year and said, no, actually, I've been spending within $10 million of the budget cap every year. You've been fucking wasting my money, is what he's implying. You've been putting him in the wrong positions. You've been hiring the wrong people. And you sat there and you fired Mick Schumacher to bring in Nico Hülkenberg, I'd like to remind everybody, and watched as the team went backwards. To the point where they were last place and you even fed up Gene Haas, who was using you as a marketable strategy. That's exactly what it was. You said fuck on camera, everybody laughed, and everybody loved you, even though you were completely useless as a team principal and taking your team backwards at every step. So you come in and now, and from the dead, and sit here and say, no, they shouldn't sign Mick Schumacher, even though everybody else is realizing what you didn't realize. He had great work ethic. He can build a car going forward, and he was an F2 and F3 champion. Just because you wanted to destroy that because he was bigger than you and at the expense of your team, which you got fired from, which is now looking way better without you, all you can offer us is to say, no, don't sign the guy that I fired. I don't want to look like a fucking moron. Team should sign Mick on principle. Just because you said no, every other team should look to be signing Mick right now. They should go, oh, that the moron who destroyed his team into last place several years? That bankrupted his team in 2020? That made the car undrivable in 2021? That guy says we shouldn't sign Mick? Yes, we should 100% sign Mick Schumacher. 100 fucking percent now. That's if there's any justice in Formula One, which there isn't. They'll listen to Gunther. There was this fucking 2 stupid North American F1 podcasters that Sean and I don't strive to be them. They strive to be us. I hope. If not, your podcast is completely useless to me. I forget their names. They're not even worth mentioning, but I saw them hire or have Gunther on as a guest the other day. And the second Gunther said fuck, its camera cuts to both of them laughing. It's like, shut up. Stop this. I can say fuck on air too. Can I run Haas now? No. Stop soliciting his advice. He has nothing to offer. He will destroy any team he's at. Drive to Survive. What did I name my book, Gunther Steiner? Surviving to Drive. You're fucking brilliant, aren't you? He has nothing good to offer Formula One. Commentator's position is exactly where he should be, where people making fun of everything he says, like I do. Thank you for being a commentator, Gunther, so I can sit here and shit on you every chance I have. You destroyed Haas. And you don't want to look like a moron if other teams take Mick Schumacher and bring him forward. And bring their team forward with him. And what is it, Gunther, by the way? I've noticed a lot of comments. So first off, when you were fired, you see, I don't have the money to build things. I should have left sooner. The team was going downhill. There was nothing I could do to stop it. And then the second they start succeeding a little bit without you, you go, yeah, I knew Nico Hülkenberg was going to be good. I knew this team was a lot better. They shouldn't have had such low expectations. I knew they were going to be good. No, you didn't. Because when you got fired, you admitted, yeah, I should have left sooner. I couldn't stop the rot. Wait, if there's a rot, then the team is going to be bad. It's good that they lowered expectations and exceeded them. They understand business without you. You were the problem, Gunther. But then the second they overachieve a little bit, you try and cling on and say, yeah, that was actually me. I knew it was coming. No, you didn't. You don't know what they're doing right now. By the way, the only reason they look a little bit better is because 3 other teams behind you, behind Haas, are completely inept right now, 2 of which are slowly starting to build back up. Haas is still going to finish 9th, everybody. Are you going to brag about Haas then? And it will have been completely in spite of you that they will finish 9th. Sauber is useless. That's the only reason why they're 10th. Haas probably would have still finished 10th this year if Sauber was a decent team. A mediocre team. They're an abysmal team, and that's why Haas looks slightly better than they are. Same with Alpine. Same with Williams. So you didn't know they were going to be good. And if they are good, it's in spite of you. Komatsu's had to deal with the 2 drivers you left him, to the point where he's destroyed Kevin Magnussen's career just to get 6 points for Nico Hülkenberg. 5 of those points have come from Magnussen destroying the cars behind Nico. 2 in the sprint, 2 at Australia, 1 at Saudi Arabia. And the only reason Nico got points in Australia is because 3 cars in front of him DNF'd. Hamilton, Verstappen, and Russell in the last lap. So you've destroyed Kevin Magnussen's reputation and career to get Nico Hülkenberg 5 points. There's probably not going to score points the rest of the season. There's no proof that they will. They've overachieved at this point by getting points in China. Otherwise, they got points in Australia like they got points in Australia last year. Less, because Nico was only awarded those points in Australia 2023. They got points in Saudi Arabia. Instead of Magnussen, this time it was Hülkenberg, like last year. So you got extra points in China and extra points at a sprint in Miami. Magnussen got 1 point in Miami the year before. They're actually 1 point behind where they were last year. They're actually doing worse now. But you're trying to brag because they look better, because the infrastructure looks better, the team looks more attractive. They're not run by a fucking moron like yourself now. So stop trying to cling to credit that you didn't do this. They did this in spite of you. Anyways, enough about this fucking moron. The other news is Williams also looking like a very attractive team again. And especially if they get rid of Sargent. They signed Albon to an extension, which was smart. This is where Albon probably belongs. I don't think they should have signed him for as long as they did, but if they like Albon, they can keep him. They can always drop him, I guess, at any point. Make him a reserve. He's still in the team. He can just make money as he sails into the sunset towards the end of his career. There's not much more than this for Albon, so I think he understood that. Williams understood that. They said, okay, you've helped us develop this far. Let's stay here. Let's keep a good thing going. But now choosing their second driver is very important, and they've linked themselves to Bottas and Sainz. They might get foisted with Antonelli next year, which would be silly, but it won't be their fault. I don't think they should want Antonelli at this point. I think Antonelli should stay in F2 another year. I think he's really good. I want to point this out. Bierman is the one I have a problem with. Antonelli, I believe, can be really good in the future. They just need to be patient with him. He needs to achieve in his positions, not just get promoted for nothing. He won 2 F4 championships last year. Okay, great. You skipped him over F3 to F2. Okay. Now let him develop at least a year or two. You know he's got a lot of runway. You know he's young. Let him iron out some of the difficulties. Give him a taste of winning in F2, and then you have a champion in the future. That's what Red Bull did sort of with Verstappen. He at least won F3 and then was skipped to F1. But they put him at the secondary team, let him develop, and then took him to the main team, and the rest is history. You have that option with Antonelli, yes, but I think you need to let him win F2 first. Let him come in with that winning mentality, like I said, then Williams can take him, and then he can slowly make his way to Mercedes. If you think he's the next Verstappen, that's how you have to do it. So Williams is connected with 2 drivers, Sainz and Bottas. And if the thought is eventually having Antonelli at Williams, Bottas or Sainz for 1 year seems like a really good idea for Williams. I would say Bottas makes more sense. He doesn't want a 1-year contract, but he's familiar with Williams. He's good with Mercedes engines. He had a great time when he was at Williams. Even though they were on the decline, he was still getting 8 podiums, overachieving there. Learned a lot from Felipe Massa, and then you brought him in for Mercedes, and he wanted more. You wanted him as the secondary driver. He probably shouldn't have stayed there forever. But Bottas at a Mercedes engine is not a bad idea, especially for 1 year if you want to bring in Antonelli. Same with Sainz. Sainz can look at that too and say, hey, if I want a better team in 2026 and get my reputation up, maybe I can spend 1 year at 2025 at the back with Williams showing my stuff and then go from there. If the thought is to bring Antonelli there, why not? Like I said, maybe Bottas for a 2-year term till the end of 26. With Albon, you need to develop the car. You say, sorry, Antonelli can't come here. I think that's the smarter play for Williams. They might, like I said, be stuck with Antonelli. But either way, you suddenly look like a team that can develop forward. You'll have 2 consistent drivers if you have Bottas and Albon, or Sainz and Albon. I think that's pretty straightforward. Williams doesn't look like a complete clusterfuck anymore. Sean said it best to me. He said, the era of paid drivers at Williams is now done. Sargent needs to go. Sargent should have never been hired. I feel really sorry for him. He was never going to succeed there. You could have kept him in F2 until he had a championship under his belt, if you really believed in him. But he just doesn't seem to have it, does he? And that whole shit with Albon crashing in Australia again, and him taking Logan's car, completely destroying Logan's confidence, signaling to the world, yeah, we don't value Sargent that much, says to me it's sooner rather than later for Sargent. And if Mercedes really wants to rush in Logan, if Mercedes really wants to rush in Antonelli, you can bring him in halfway through the season, just finally put Sargent out of his misery. Or here's an option, maybe Mick Schumacher for the rest of the season. Let Toto Wolff prove that, hey, he's actually a lot better than we thought he was. Mick can earn his seat at Alpine, which I still think is the best course of action for him, especially if there's a Briatore, Newey, Briatore, and Braun. I'm trying to coax Ross Braun out of retirement. If everybody's loving Adrian Newey, we should love Ross Braun too. But yeah, Williams suddenly looks like a smart team again. Williams and Alpine in this past couple weeks are starting to get rid of the problems. So I look forward to their future. One last thing I want to talk about. The Corriere dello Sport, the Italian magazine, reported that Antonelli crushed Mick Schumacher in the testing, was even faster than Russell in the testing. Now, I think that's complete nonsense because, it's a report. They're not showing the times. It's also an Italian outfit trying to push an Italian driver, and we know Formula One media does shit like this, where they make up rumors in the hopes that it pushes teams to make actions or take steps. I would just like to point out something. We're reading the statements from the team saying, no, this wasn't a head-to-head shootout. This was just to drivers testing out our cars, helping us gather information forward, trying to get Antonelli, our prospect, familiar with F1 cars. It's exactly what you should say. But I'd like to point out to everybody, when the report was released as to what they were going to do before the test, there was a breakdown from either Planet F1 or mosport.com, I can't remember, motorsport.com, outlining what the itinerary was for this test. And if you actually read it like I did, it was Mick Schumacher was adjusting the car, setting up the car in the mediums, trying to get the right setup in the car so that Antonelli could come and test on the softs. Which says two things. A, Antonelli better have been faster than Mick in a soft compound tire in the same car. Otherwise, we have a bigger problem with Antonelli. And B, it seems like Antonelli, they've already signaled the type of driver he is. That he's not a good setup man. He's not going to know how to fix the car if there's problems. He's just a fast driver, a quick driver like I've talked about in the past. It seems like Mick has all the knowledge as to how to have the proper setup on this Mercedes. So they're sitting here saying, oh, Antonelli crushed Mick and George's times. Mick set up the car for him. Mick is the F1 driver in that sense. Mick understands the car. Antonelli doesn't understand the car yet. How many drivers have we talked about in the past that are just drivers that are good with good cars that are set up for them, but don't know how to fix it the second the car has any types of problems? That's an issue. If Antonelli is faster, it's because Mick gave him the good car. I'm not shitting on Antonelli. Like I said, I want him in F1 in the future. But they're sort of implying that, oh, he's faster than Mick, yeah. Mick's overrated. George is even overrated. They know how to set up their cars. Not George, but Mick does. As we can tell with George, we're seeing what George can do this year at his full extent. It's not great. So did Antonelli really crush Mick? Not if you actually read the itinerary of the testing. Mick was on the mediums doing the long stints, setting up the car. Antonelli came in just to do fast times and softs. Mick is on mediums, Antonelli's on softs. Thank God Antonelli was faster, otherwise this whole hype is completely useless. Anyways, I just thought I'd point that out. The news media isn't going to talk about it. They're just going to run with the headlines that Antonelli was faster. They're not going to read the itinerary like I did. They're just going to go for hype. And it seems like the F1 media does not want Mick Schumacher anywhere near an F1 seat. And I don't understand why. And like I said before, Nick's news is going to be about pushing Mick Schumacher till he's on the grid. And then Nick's news will become about critiquing Mick Schumacher. I promise you that much. Or maybe I'll just play defense for him. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. But that's Nick's news for today. Just to recap, Alpine and Williams suddenly look very attractive. Perez was the right choice at Red Bull. And Carlos Sainz better get moving on choosing a seat. And Alpine, fuck Zhou Guanyu and Jack Doohan, get Mick in that car. F1_philosophy at Instagram, F1 Philosophy at YouTube, and F1PhilosophyPod at gmail.com to join our fantasy league. Thanks for being patient with me today. I had a lot to get off my chest. But I'll see you next time for Nick's news. Once the teams keep signing drivers for the 2025 season, hopefully Sean and I can have a nice discussion on that too, come summer break. Anyways, we'll have our predictions on Instagram for you for the Canadian Grand Prix, which is this Sunday. Looking forward to it. It's always a great race. Have a good night, everybody.